This is Mr. Gilman. Today we're going to talk about bar graphs and line graphs, but today just the bar graph side. And what a bar graph is it's a graph made of horizontal or vertical bars displaying data. So here's two different types of bar graphs. One is the vertical bar graph with the bars going up and down, and one is the horizontal bar graph with the bars going from side to side. And for what we're going to do today, we're going to be just using specifically vertical bar graphs. And all of our bar graphs are going to look like the graph on the left-hand side of the screen. Okay, now I'm going to use this bar graph to answer the following questions. Now, unfortunately, all the questions didn't quite fit on the paper with it. So let's just observe the bar graph at first, okay, before we get to the questions. We have the length in kilometers of these rivers, okay, and we go from 0 to 600, 1200, 1800. It's going up by 600 each time, and all the different rivers are listed at the bottom. Okay, so the first question I want to know is, which bar represents the longest river, and how long is that river? Okay, which bar represents the longest river, and about how long is that river? So right now I'm going to look at the longest river. I'm looking for the bar at the very top, the tallest bar. And to me it looks like it's going to be the Nile River. Okay, the Nile River is at the highest point. So I'm going to say the Nile River is the longest. And I'm going to say it's also, if I look here on my chart, I'm going to say it's about 6,600 kilometers. Okay, it's about 6,600 kilometers. So I'm going to say, for my first answer, I'm going to say, what bar represents the longest river? The Nile River, and I'm going to say it's about 6,600 kilometers long. Okay. Second thing I need to know is about how much longer is the Nile than the Yangtze. So let's check it out here. We want to know how much longer is the Nile than the Yangtze. So we're going to look at the Nile and we say, okay, the Nile is 6,600. The Nile right here, we're going to say, here's the Nile, it's at 6,600 kilometers. And now let's look at the Yangtze. Looking at the Yangtze, it's a little under 6,000, it looks like to me. A little under, 6,000. So I'm going to say it's about 5,900 kilometers. Now, I want to know how much longer is the Nile than the Yangtze. Well, let's just see here. 5,900, 6,000, 6,100, 6,200, 6,300. You can just count, or what you can do is you can say, I know that the Nile is 6,600, and I know that the Yangtze is 5,900, then their difference must be 700. So I'm going to say that the Nile is about 700 kilometers longer than the Yangtze. And now it asks us which rivers are over 5,400 kilometers long. Which of these rivers are over 5,400 kilometers long? So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at my chart here. And I'm going to say, all right, here's the 5,400 marker. The 5,400 marker is right here, this guy right here, this line. And I need to know which of these rivers are taller than that, are bigger than that, longer than that. So I'm going to say the Nile definitely is. I'm going to say the Yangtze is, the Ob River, and the Amazon. So there's 4 I need to write down. I need to write down the Nile, the Ob, the Amazon, and the Yangtze. The Nile, the Ob, the Yangtze, and the Amazon. Okay, those are all over 5,400 kilometers long. And so now, let's just make our own bar graph. It says, children's injuries caused by toys. And as you can see, all the toys are listed on the side, and then the number of injuries are on the right-hand column. So it says make a bar graph of the data. Now, I'm going to really have to squish my bar in here. I want you to go ahead and have it really clear on your paper exactly what your bar graph has. Okay, I'm going to abbreviate a little bit. I'm going to say marbles M, B, TG, B again. I'm going to say B plus for B blocks and. Then we'll say non-wheeled flying toys, WRT, and children's wagons. So those are all my abbreviations I'm going to say. All right, I'm going to look at my data over here. I'm going to see the number of injuries. It goes from 1845 all the way up to 7935. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go by thousands, I think. I'm just going to go by thousands. So this is going to be a little hard to see, but we're going to try and make it as clear as possible. Here's my graph. I'm going to say we need a column for M, B, TG, B plus, NW, FT, we're just going to call that one W, and CW. Okay, and on my side I'm going to go 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9,000 at the top, and we're just going to remember that each one is 1,000. I also need to label my axes. On the bottom, I'm going to call it the toys. These are all my toys on the bottom. On the side, I'm going to say number of injuries. Number of injuries. So make sure you label your axes. Okay. For marbles, there was 1,845 injuries. So I'm going to put my first little point. I'm going to go ahead and draw my line all the way up until I get to about 1,800 right there, a little less than 2,000. I'm going to make my first bar. And in a bar graph, always there's spaces in between your bars. Then I'm going to go to my balloons, and I know my balloons are a little more than that. It'll be hard to tell, but balloons are a little more than the marbles. And then the toy guns are up 2,600 about. I'm going to go up 2,000 and a little more than halfway, and then back down again. And so on. I'm going to do this for every single one. Blocks and pull toys a little bit higher, close to 3,000. Right there. And then non-wheeled riders all the way up at 4,000. Right there. And then flying toys, a little bit higher than that, about 200 more. Then wheeled toys, 65. Now we're really talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're about halfway there, so we need to go all the way up to up there. And then finally children's wagons all the way up at 8,000, almost to the top. And we have our bar graph. So just remember, when you're doing your bar graph, the important things to remember are you need a title on each axis. You need to label your axis accordingly. So if your data goes from 1,800 to 7,000 or 8,000, you need to make sure your axis is going to have plenty of space on it. And then you need to make your bars on your graph, okay? And they represent how many injuries in this case. And each bar needs to have a space in between it. Otherwise, you're making a histogram. So just keep those things in mind as you're doing your homework today.